Hey, folks. We're about to begin. We have our Neurofeedback and Chill live stream tonight. Thanks for those of you guys who are showing up at the beginning. That's so nice to see. I see a chat here from Ben asking questions already. That's great. Tonight we're going to talk about sleep a little bit first, and then I'll go into let me start at the beginning. If you haven't met me before, I'm Andrew Hill. I'm a neuroscientist who's been doing neurofeedback for about 25 years. And across that time, I've developed a perspective on the brain with regards to regulatory features, big features of how the brain works that you can see from brain mapping and you can learn to take control of using biohacking, including something called neurofeedback that I do a lot of, but also other biohacking as well. So I want to get into a little bit of neurofeedback on myself, which is what I do on these Neurofeedback and Chill live streams. And then I'll run a couple short neurofeedback sessions, little segments of different training and explain those as I'm doing them. And then after maybe 15, 20 minutes, I'll shift over to just describing a little bit more on my perspective on sleep. And we'll go into some of the biohacks you can do without neurofeedback as well. So let me get myself set up here. Hey, Ben. This week is sleep. That's right. So Ben, as I'm setting up, I'll answer your other question you left. Thanks so much. So for those folks who aren't seeing it, Ben was wondering about what we do when a client has a lot of dysregulation, is really heavily activated or impaired in some way. The example here is DID, dissociative identity disorder. So in that case, someone's got severe anxiety and dysregulation, and they're shifting through parts of the brain, activations of the brain that is not that stable. So I would treat someone like that the same way I would go after helping somebody who has big developmental phenomena. Like someone who's very profoundly autistic will also have this very strong activation tone. And if you can just calm down the nervous system a little bit, you can often help people regulate a lot better. And so I would start with adding some resilience if we could, helping regulate sleep and anxiety and trauma phenomena, and then move into maybe some deeper work. Depends on where the DID is coming from. If it's a pure trauma response, then we have tools for that. If it's more of a thought disorder type phenomena, we can have impact, but it's not quite as linear or as, we aren't quite as sure about affecting thought disorder phenomena. So I'm putting a clip on my ear here for those who are wondering what I'm doing. So Ben, I would just take people, I would focus on resilience for fragmented clients who are having a lot of trouble. That's all. That's all. I mean, it's huge if you can get it. And you should be able to help regulatory features. And people that are really acute, it's a great place to start. You can often do a lot more than you might expect without having to get fancy. So I'm putting some paste, electrolyte paste on ear clips, putting a second ear clip on my second ear. Okay, here we go. Camera set up better today, it looks like, so I can actually see myself. So this is my ground. I'm not actually using this wire for training. It's just a ground in terms of where the 0 point is on the body. And I have a left ear, which is my subtraction or reference wire. And then I have my scalp wire, which is what we will be subtracting on the other half. And I'm going to do two protocols today. One of them is at C3, left side precentral gyrus, and I'll do a beta protocol up in the mid-teens. And then I will do a vertex protocol at CZ, the central zenith, and I'll do an SMR protocol for that, and I'll explain why in a minute. Let me first find my C3. So you start at the notch, you go up an inch to T3, you find the vertex, and halfway between is C3. So it's about there. Let me find it's a little hard to do sometimes. I'm doing this in a reversed camera too, so I'm like moving left and seeing things move right. There we go. All right, is my C3 okay? I have this habit of putting things a little high. Maybe it is a little high. I'll move it down a tiny bit. You have about a centimeter of leeway in any direction from the perfect location. So I was close enough, but now I'm even better. There we go. So sleep is a really important thing, of course, for all of us. And the reason I'm doing left side training at C3, this is this left coordinate, central 3, is because this left precentral gyrus that the wire is on top of, it's involved with voluntary action. It's involved with stabilizing vigilance and stabilizing our attentional processes, but also in the stabilization of turning them off. So this left side beta resource really focuses on the sharp, crisp, bright attention being on, but it also keeps us asleep at night. So it's involved with the sleep maintenance. And then after that, I'll do a vertex protocol, a CZ, and spindling beta at CZ, SMR beta, is what's used to both fall asleep and to stay asleep. So I'm sort of doing a compound executive function and sleep protocol, where the left side should boost me, both in executive and in quality of sleep. And then the vertex should sort of create a calm softening of my focus and of my body, and should let me fall asleep a little more easily. So let's see. Yeah, you have about a centimeter of leeway, Ben, in every direction. So, all right, I haven't set up the protocols yet, though. So let me go in and monkey for a second with my eager. So I'm selecting the client. I'm ANH, the notorious ANH. I'm going to plan my session. I'm going to pick a 2-segment. Oh, I've already got a 2-segment protocol pending. So let me modify it. Let's see. The first setup, let's make it C3. And we'll do 4 to 7, not 4 to 10. I'm eliminating the 7 to 10 in the training band here because when doing sleep work, you don't generally want to muck about with alpha. Alpha has the tendency to rebound. And if you inhibit 4 to 10, you'll get a lot more of a boost in focus, potentially mood at C3, but you might get a rebound in lightened sleep because alpha will then surge back a little bit later on. So if you're trying to impact sleep, actually in general, stay away from alpha as your first course in a region and go after it later after you've helped that region regulate in other ways. But in this case, it wouldn't make sense for a sleep protocol itself. All right, I've got 4 to 7 inhibit, a 15 hertz award. It's a little fast for me. I'm going to bring it down to 14.875. Let's get fancy and go with 1/8 of a hertz. Same thing for the top end, 17.875 hertz. Let's leave the top inhibit at 24 to 36. And I'm not going to run super long. I try to run a little bit abbreviated for these. 6 minutes? Yeah, that's fine. Let's do 6 minutes. And then I'll do a vertex protocol, a CZ. So let's put that on CZ. Whoops, clear it first. Now CZ. And 4 to 7 is great, but I want to reward SMR. So in this case, I'm actually going to reward a full 12 to 15, which is not a, well, let me match them. Let me do 11.875. That's a tiny bit faster than my SMR is at my vertex. So I'm kind of pushing it a little bit, and that should help me get better sleep actually tonight. So let me change my, let's see, 4 to 7, 11 to 14, 20, 32. That's pretty good. Another 6 minutes? Sure. These are pretty short protocols. Usually I'd do like 15 and 15 or at least 12 and 12, but 6 and 6 is enough for demoing. And it's short enough that I can be changing things over and still talking to you guys. All right, so let me save this. And let me run eager. Gonna pick a game. I have some pretty basic games. I actually reached out to one of the game vendors today and checked. I thought I had additional licenses for other games on this computer. Turns out that I do. They just aren't activated. So I'll have other games I can demo. I'm gonna go through a few of the Zukor games, I think, and show you guys what that looks like in the next couple of weeks. I might do just a dedicated video on just games and run through the built-in eager games, the Ardea 3-dimensional eager games, and then the Zukor games. But today, the simple built-ins are fine. I'm going to go after, let's do V-dot mazes. Pretty basic, but we like it and it runs fine. Okay, raw signal at the top of the screen. This is initializing. Give it a couple seconds. My scale is 20 microvolts in height. There we go. A decent signal quality. Not bad, not bad. Double check my frequencies, double check, looking pretty good. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto scale and auto threshold, and you do that by hitting F9 and F11 back and forth. This one's actually scaled pretty well already by default, so it didn't change much. And just to refresh those of you who might not be familiar with Eager, this top squiggle is the raw EEG. I'm pulling that off my head. Wait, which side am I on? I am on the left, okay. I'm pulling signals off my head on this left precentral gyrus, C3, and that's the raw squiggle on the top of the screen. And then I am filtering out 3 different frequencies. You can see here 4 to 7 on the left, 14.875, it rounds up for the display, to 17.875, which is beta. And then a high beta, 24 to 36. And what I'm doing is I'm training up. I'm rewarding this beta. You can see just below my head, there's a 12.4 average. That's my microvolts in this range of beta. And that's coming out of the whole signal, which has a range, an average of 66 microvolts. So I'm pulling out a fair amount of beta information out of the raw signal, and I want to reward that. So what I've done is I put a threshold just below it. This is the position of the blue lines, which are maybe a little hard to see on the screen. But essentially, I've set thresholds just below where I am. You know, right now it says 10.6, 10.8. And whenever my brain stays above that in beta, beeps and other gameplay will happen. Whenever my beta dips and goes below that threshold, it'll interrupt the game. Pretty straightforward. And one doesn't really have control over our brain waves. We can't feel them. We can't really control them that much. So this is mostly an involuntary process. So I'm training up, meaning allowing to be trained up, this beta frequency. We also have other frequencies. Theta is 4 to 7. Theta takes the brakes off. It lets things happen. So lots of theta on the left would produce impulsivity, maybe poor sleep. And then I have 24 to 36 also inhibited, meaning for these inhibit bands, I'm measuring them and rewarding when they go down or stay down. So let's kick off the game. Hit F5 on Eager. There it is. And so you can see I have a little Pac-Man zipping around, slowly zipping. And I'm sure you can hear those beeps. Let me know, the audio is a little bit delayed here, but let me know if you can hear my beeps, please. For some reason, I can't maximize. There we go. Trying to catch up with my chats here. I made the mistake of not resizing my OBS screen before starting Eager, and it commands. I'm going to actually escape Eager and restart it because it takes control of the screen, and I can't control my stream. So let me just move my stream a little bit before I start Eager. Can't see what's going on otherwise. There we go. Now I can see you guys a lot better. Okay, so now I can read your questions. Let me start off my session here and run that again. There we go. Let's just run v.mazes again. Okay. So Ben, I think that big burst at the beginning is just the amplifier waking up that you just see there. You're seeing it happen again. I've also got some blinks and movement. So yeah, Ben, delta is related to sleep processes, slow wave sleep and deep sleep. But excess delta is really a sign of high perfusion as the tissue tries to recover. It's often a metabolic problem when you see delta as activation and not inactivation. All right, let me kick off let me change my my text here. It's hilarious. I seem to have lost control. I have to have a talk with OBS or Eager. Let me escape it again. Once Once eager is, there it goes. All right, third time's the charm. It really isn't generally this hard, except I have like 3 pieces of software that I'm trying to run at the same time with the streaming software. Thanks for the confirmation on the beeps, Ben. Appreciate it. Just for fun, let's change games. Let's go to Island. Let's go to the Tropics. All right, let me start the game. Whoops. There we go. Cool. All right. So now we're training. And as you guys know, I can do neurofeedback and mostly ignore what's happening, and it still works just fine. I'm actually going to do some manual scaling. It's kind of, you can see how the waves are super small. So I'm going to select the 4 to 7. I'm going to hit F9 and scale it manually so you can see what I'm doing. Hit minus a couple times. So we have a low, there we go. Now we see a nice big slow brain wave. Same thing for the reward band. There we go. And then for the high inhibit, we'll leave that one 10 where it is. This way you can see the waveforms a little better. There we go. So on this game, whenever my brain's in range, the blue bar is the reward band. And the purple box is the theta, or the inhibit for the slow band. And the yellow box is the inhibit for the fast brain waves. So when my theta and my fast beta are small, the outer boxes, and my regular beta is big, the blue box, that will pass the rewards and we'll get some beeps. In this game, we get a seagull in the sky. And the metaphor here is leaving an island on a boat, and you're seeing the wake of the boat trail out behind you with little flecks of foam as rewards as well on the screen. It's kind of silly. The movement we're getting in the raw signal, or rather the big waves we're getting, is movement from moving my body and talking, and moving the wires when I'm doing it. So I'm adding some noise to the process. And it sort of means that I'm not getting the best quality session in, but I've already restarted twice, so let's just run with it. Let me see if I missed any questions here. Yeah, Ben, I think you're right. The presence of delta that's dominating in tissue and preventing other frequencies from showing up is a metabolic sign of injury or the tissue not perfusing properly. If it's over perfusing and making only delta, that's kind of a problem, yeah. Look at that, already into my second period. So this is the rest period. Eager runs for 3 minutes, and the last 10 seconds of that by default is rest. You can see here on the screen I have a red bar, which is my time in seconds, and the blue bar was the number of beeps I got, or reward events that I got. Those are a little arbitrary. The software should be adjusting every few seconds the way I've set it up to give me roughly the same amount of beeps per every few minutes, but it isn't always exactly like that. All right, my waves are getting big. I'm going to do some scaling just to make them less visually dominant on the screen. So I'm just going to scale this raw signal up a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to auto scale everything. Okay. And that'll just keep the waves a little bit more under control. The scaling on the raw signal in Eager affects the high pass filter. So if you have a signal that's drifting because of sweat or something, you can increase the scale. It will pull the signal back into range a little bit, which is cool. Those are blinks and movement pops from shifting wires. Yeah, auto scaling can work pretty well, Ben, but it can also reduce learning if it's too smooth. So I'm not a fan of auto scaling that is constant or like super, super fast adaptive auto scaling. I prefer discrete scaling where every so often it catches up. And I think that's a lot better for learning if the rewards are not continuously contingent in that way, but if they're sort of approximating the change in the envelope of power of the signal. I think that's really where the learning is occurring. So I'm not sure if that's been ever proven, but I like it. Ooh, look at me go, making all the beta waves. Woohoo! So also it's like 6 something p.m. at night. I'm hot and sweaty because it's been really hot here in Southern California. And the C3 is going to give me some energy, so I'll get some work done later in the day. Hey, Elliot asking, is there a way to visualize my personal SMR frequency? If we focus on intent to be still, can you see a peak around 14? You cannot, not really visually. The best way to estimate your SMR frequency is to look at your alpha frequency. You look at the eyes closed, PZ, linked ears, alpha, and the raw number will be somewhere near 10. And the distance it is away from 10 is going to be the distance your SMR is away from 12 to 15. So SMR is like 13 and a half, of course. So, you know, if you have a alpha speed that's 9.5 instead of 10, then your SMR is probably 11.5 to 14.5, essentially. Let me change over to my second wire here. Let's see. So the second protocol, let me go back to my eager for 1 second, and you hit F5 to advance. Oh, of course, my Windows is getting in the way. Function F5 to advance. Now it says CZ in the upper left. Before I hit start, I have to move a wire. So it's going to find the vertex, which on me is pretty easy to find. And you can see that I didn't even bother to stop eager. I'm just moving the wire. There's not quite enough paste though, so let me put some more paste on there. There we go. Just making sure my paste is on the right side of the electrode. It sticks better when you put it on the proper side. Okay, now my signal should recover. Let's see. Look at that. Look at how smart eager is, or the amplifier, or the combination. Just getting rid of all that noise. All right. Hey, Fred. Fred's asking, what is SMR? Yeah, sensory motor rhythm, which is the core aspect of, it's a core frequency in the brain, a core frequency in neurofeedback. It's pretty awesome. Let me start my next session here. Okay. So SMR, sensory motor rhythm, is kind of like the calm relaxation tone in the body. If you've seen a cat on a windowsill, you've seen it. It's the liquid body and laser-like focus. And that ability to still the body and concentrate the mind and stabilize that concentration with SMR. It's literally the opposite of ADHD, literally. And this is why training up SMR has such a profound impact on ADHD. But SMR is also called sigma or sleep spindles when we're asleep. And it's used to both initiate sleep and to stay asleep when you hear a sound you don't have to wake up for instance. You know, a car goes by, the brain will start to wake up, and then there's a burst of SMR that keeps us asleep, keeps the maintenance of the sleep. And that happens at the vertex here. So this vertex, this CZ-SMR protocol I'm doing, is really designed to be a mix of executive function and sleep for me. Okay, other questions. Ben is asking, is the bin count on eager spectrogram adjustable? I think it is actually. I think in the preferences you can change what shows up. There's that orange bar jumping around, which is the dominant frequency. And I believe you can turn that off, or you can add additional ones for additional frequencies, I believe. I forget, and this is, I don't remember the keyboard command for changing it in real time. Let's see. Ben is saying an open circuit is high SNR than a closed one. Oh, it is opposite of typical electrical. Yeah. Yeah, beta regulates sleep, not theta. Sleep is a functional phenomena of your delta and your beta doing things. I mean, REM is a beta phenomena, paradoxical sleep, you look awake. When you're moving into slow wave sleep, that's a delta phenomena. And generally, you're in those two states. You're in slower wave, non-REM states, deltas, and sometimes thetas. And then you're in beta states during REM. And at the beginning of the night in stage 1 sleep, you're in alpha and theta a little bit as you fall into sleep, that hypnagogic mode. That's what alpha theta neurofeedback does. But yes, on the left-hand side, vigilant stabilization will help me stay asleep tonight. And on the vertex, the low beta or SMR frequency I'm training will help me still my body and fall asleep, potentially, as well as have some calm focus later on today. So I think what I'm going to do, because you guys are asking awesome questions, I think I can turn on my notes. I'm learning something each time. Let's see. I know I can't turn them on because Eager won't let me take the click back. See it flash in that yellow box. The yellow box says focus lost, click here for control. But I think the newer Eager actually grabs control, so you can't have another application on the screen in front of it like I'm trying to do. So have to give it another 2.5 minutes before I can show you my notes. Getting a good run of SMR in here. Making my 10 microvolts. Ben's asking, by the way, do I ever use the synchrony protocols? Looking to try phase-based training soon and seems to get much attention in literature. Sometimes I do, but Ben, you can do a lot of phase and synchrony and coherence work with doing 2-channel duals, 2-channel sum, and even single channel. If you want to, if you're hypercoherent or have too much phase, too hypercoherent or too low a phase lag between two regions, you can do a difference protocol like FZ minus PZ. If they were hypercoherent, you could reward the frequency they're hypercoherent in and you break up the coherence. Or alpha theta sum protocols or any sum protocol, if you add the signals together before measuring the waves, you've created a synchrony protocol out of that. So I do combinations of things with duals, with sums, and with difference protocols, approximating the goals for coherence and phase and synchrony. And I really only do straight synchrony protocols when doing alpha theta, because there it really does work quite beautifully to keep the hemisphere synchronized on either side while you're in the hypnagogic sort of state shift that alpha theta can create. So alpha theta with a 2-channel synchrony protocol really creates this internal communication effect on top of the creativity and flow state effect. So it's pretty awesome for some people. Hey, David. When someone has very high alpha at CZ, what's the best approach to training SMR up? Honestly, you probably should be careful to avoid their alpha at CZ. There's a couple of reasons you might have high alpha at CZ. It's probably not coming from there. There's either a lack of alpha at PZ, or the alpha is not actually alpha. The alpha might actually be a beta frequency that's slowed down because of fatigue. It could be even theta that's sped up because of trauma. So CZ can be a little bit squirrely. It's usually a really safe and gentle place to train. But sometimes, especially with a trauma history or significant anxiety, that alpha that you see on the vertex is a sign of that anxiety lurking. And if you train SMR, low beta, up at CZ, you won't create an SMR effect. You'll create a fast alpha run because they overlap. You know, fast alpha goes up to 13 hertz or so. And if someone has SMR and you're trying to train 11.5 to help them be calm, and you trip into their fast alpha or their beta slowed down into alpha, something to having trauma responses. So if somebody had alpha that was strong at the vertex at CZ, I would probably expect that they have something really wonky going on at FZ and PZ at the anterior and posterior cingulate, because those are strong alpha generators and the vertex should not be. And so if there's a dearth of alpha in either the temporal lobes or parietal lobes or the back midline at posterior cingulate, I'd probably start bringing up alpha there first, and it would maybe bring the alpha back. You know, if you have an excess of alpha at FZ, for instance, and you reward alpha at PZ, it pulls the alpha back, and you end up with a regulated FZ, never touching it. David, if you're curious, you can look at my dissertation, but I did a whole bunch of neurofeedback at C3 and C4, both active and sham, and put a cap on top of the head and was looking at what was happening with a 64-channel ERP cap. And mostly, validated our perspective on neurofeedback, which is you get effects in the frequency you're training, on the hemisphere you're training, and you don't get effects with sham. But one interesting thing that I saw looking deeper was we were getting C3 effects when doing neurofeedback at C4. It wasn't an SMR, like if you're doing C4 SMR, it wasn't an SMR effect at C3 exactly, but the C3 sites were reacting to the training at C4, just not in exactly the same yoked contingent way. So I believe the homotopic sites influence each other more than we tend to think about in practice. And there may be this ability to sort of train those regions and get other regions to change the same way that you can get the DMN nodes, the anterior cingulate and posterior cingulate, to let go of excess alpha and reassert proper posterior midline alpha if you need. It seems to be a phenomena of regulation you can tap into in some ways, these distal circuits that are tied together that will co-regulate. So again, that might get back into Ben's question about synchrony too, because these are some of the same ideas you would use when designing synchrony protocols. Also, Dr. Fischel, I would suggest CZ is not the first protocol. C4 is a bit gentler. For some people, it's not likely to cause trauma responses. So I always start with a C4 SMR. And based on someone's reaction to C4 SMR, you can predict how iffy a CZ is going to be if you also have their brain map in front of you, generally. So when in doubt, C4 SMR, undershoot someone's native SMR frequency a tiny bit, and you'll create a calming effect. All right, so I think I have a slide here, a single slide for you to look at. I do. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Let's see. Okay, there we go. There we go. Put myself back on the screen. I'll put myself over here. Yes, of course, David, my pleasure. All right, you guys can see that, I think, my biohacking sleep notes. I'm not sure I can see it, but I know this stuff, so I'll wing it. I've also written out some of the non-neurofeedback biohacks into an article. It's linked in the description for this video, and you can go back to my website and check that out. And we also have a deal for brain mapping at Peak Brain. I put that link in the description as well. So if you want to get your own brain map and work with me on understanding how your executive function, your sleep, your stress work, please come grab a map and I'll check out your brain with you. But for today, let's talk about sleep. So the first thing, you saw me doing some beta protocols on the left-hand side. That's the vigilance stabilizer, but it also stabilizes the absence of wakeful vigilance. So C3 beta helps you be awake when you're awake and asleep when you're asleep. Another related theory to C3 beta training is if you bring up the beta tone on the left-hand side, you create this alertness phenomena subjectively. And we probably suppress the micro sleeping that's happening, the background sleeping that's happening when someone's really dysregulated. So by creating this almost timing effect by waking them up when they're awake, I think that helps the vigilance flip back and forth from on when you're awake to off when you aren't. And of course, I mentioned the vertex, SMR, sensory motor rhythm, this calm cat frequency that helps us sit still. SMR also suppresses seizures. That was how neurofeedback was discovered at this point 55 or 56 years ago. And SMR also helps with sleep staging pretty acutely. It helps with both the onset and the maintenance. It helps with the memory consolidation. Bursts of SMR in the cortex, 12 hertz bursts or 13 hertz bursts, seem to create a 0.9 hertz ripple. It's not exactly EEG, it's a different signature, but it's a very similar phenomena, 0.9 hertz ripple that happens in the hippocampus in response to the cortex bursting in SMR when we're asleep. And that's that maybe we think it's the process of memory consolidation, of moving memories from short into long-term storage. So sleep, really important for you. You guys all know this because you're here watching, or you've come to the video later and you're watching, so you know why sleep's important. It's got all kinds of functional significance. I'm not going to go into the sleep architecture and the stages now. I will get into some myths later on, and I have one or two myths that I really want you to hear, because I got to kill some biohacker sacred cows right now. A lot of what you're being told by biohackers about your sleep is wrong. Some of the advice is centered around what products can do or what products are in the marketplace, not what actually works. And there's some bad advice out there. So in good YouTube fashion, hold to the end of the video to hear some of the myths and bad habits in sleep that people think are good habits. All right, let's keep digging in. So SMR is also called sleep spindles, or sigma. And I've talked about how it maintains some of the architecture of sleep and has other sleep-related phenomena. But what can we talk about in terms of biohacking? What do we have for strategies that are not necessarily, let's see, neurofeedback protocols, and then we have behavior. So biohacking is this process of manipulating yourself or the environment to make changes in function. And generally we think about biohackers being focused on performance, cognitive performance, athletic performance, aging performance, but you really can biohack your way into regulatory improvement through suffering, to improve goals, or just because. So there's all kinds of phenomena we do, and we sort of engage in regulatory habits anyways. We get up in the morning, brush our teeth. We have these regulatory support habits, and you can change some of them, especially when it comes to sleep. So here's my first sacred cow that I'm going to slaughter that the biohackers tend to teach wrong. The most important cue from the environment for sleep is not light. It's not when you sleep. It's definitely not sort of how much you sleep. It's when you eat. Eating food is the number one exogenous cue. It's much, much stronger than any other cue for setting the time of day. So my first rule for you is eat in the time zone you want to live in, and you won't throw yourself off. And in fact, you can hack this rule the other direction. You can travel across time zones, and the human body can handle about 1 hour, about one time zone per day, no problem. So this is why being on screens late at night, which only push your circadian rhythm forward by an hour, isn't that much of a problem, because you can absorb that slop of that hour of screens late at night usually. But you can hack this with international travel, and 3 days before you leave, either direction, start adjusting your meal times progressively to match the time zone you're in. And you can end up really just sliding into Europe from the US with very little adjustment time. It's pretty cool. So check it out. Time shifting your meals for circadian. Other really big phenomena for biohacking are sleep would be phenomena around temperature. Body temperature at night's a big thing. Phenomena around breathing. Many of us mouth breathe at night, which shorts us of oxygenation. It's very dehydrating. It's a pretty inefficient way to be. It leads to snoring a lot more easily. So learning to nasal breathe when you're sleeping is important. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with some mouth taping. It's a pretty effective hack for deepening your sleep for many people. You can also have a bed chiller to make the bed cooler. Lots and lots of hacks out there. But in order of importance, again, when you eat is number one. What's number two? It's when you get up in the morning. It's that early morning time. So the time you go to bed doesn't matter that much for circadian support, but when you wake up, that matters. In fact, light matters in the morning, not later in the day. We're somewhat insensitive to light cues in the second half of the day. But in the morning, for about 1 hour after sunrise and about half an hour before sunrise, there's this blue color of light in the air that hits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, this nucleus that sits on top of the optic chiasm. And its main job is to sample the color of light in the air and act as a cascading clock reset throughout the brain to create synchrony throughout our circadian rhythm. So the brain locks in with the Earth's photoperiod, and all the different clocks inside the body resynchronize and get reset that morning. So morning light is fairly important, but that's the light that matters. So more on that later on. And then the third rule is activity, gentle morning activity. Cortisol, blood sugar, they burst to wake you up. Work out just enough to burn those off, and not so much you call for more energy. So your CrossFit, box visit, or your steady state 3-hour run, or your long distance bike ride, not the thing to do first thing in the morning. So go to bed fasted to allow yourself to get that food timing cue, get up early in the morning, and then go for a walk or do some yoga. Those are the big three. And let me unpack the first one a tiny bit more. Go to bed fasted because melatonin suppresses pancreatic insulin release. So if your circadian rhythm is at all intact, as you get later in the day, your body's going to release some melatonin, which suppresses insulin. The falling insulin creates the urge to snack. This is why you want to snack at night. Evolutionarily, it makes a lot of sense. Doesn't make so much sense when you can reach into your fridge and grab whatever you need all the time. So resist the urge to release more insulin. Let it drop further. Go to bed with moderate to low blood sugar. Then you have a growth hormone release. If you're below 30, you have a fair amount anyways, but the big pulse comes after you fall asleep. If you're above 35 or 40, you only get that one growth hormone pulse a couple hours after you fall asleep. That's it. So if you go to bed full and fed, you'll have no growth hormone. You'll skim the surface of sleep. You'll be hot all night, wake up unrested and fat. But if you go to bed fasted, you'll wake up in the morning lean, full of energy, and ready to go. So don't eat before bed, get up early, go for a walk. Also keep the room or the bed chill. You can get a chili pad from Uller. Keep the temperature of the bed adjusting throughout the night. You can do mouth taping, maybe blackout curtains. Get a good sleep tracker. An Oura Ring or a Whoop strap are decent. And the deep sleep numbers on those trackers, pretty reliable. Now, here's my first big sacred cow. Don't believe REM. REM is nonsense when it comes to sleep trackers. The REM numbers you're getting from all those wearables, nonsense, worse than nonsense, misleading and inaccurate. Also, REM is one of those things that biohackers do not have to worry about because it doesn't fluctuate that much without all hell breaking loose. It's kind of like blood pH. I don't want anyone ever to tell me about the food I have to eat to make my blood pH more or less alkaline. If you alter your blood pH much at all, you die quickly. It's not a phenomenon that regulates out sort of a narrow range very well at all. And REM is kind of the same way. REM takes care of itself. It asserts itself. And we don't really have to worry about it because by the time REM is impaired, we're hallucinating, we're psychotic, we're deeply depressed. So your REM doesn't like slowly go off the rails. It dysregulates as you become mentally quite ill. So don't worry about your REM. You're actually probably dreaming every night, even if you don't remember it. It's a very common thing to not have enough deep sleep, so you can't consolidate the memory of dreaming and don't think you did. So go to bed early and fasted, get up early, go for a walk. Don't worry about your REM. Look at the deep sleep numbers on those trackers. Try to get your deep sleep up to 25% if you're an adult, maybe 30% if you're a kid, and really bring those numbers up. That's the one thing to watch is the deep sleep number on these trackers. All right, let me check your questions here. Ben's going to bed fasted, but then he, I see, but it takes, yeah. If you're not used to having big fasting windows, then there can be an adjustment period, especially if you're trying to do too many biohacks at once and like you've started to intermittent fast. And then you're like, well, Andrew says fast before bed, and I was going to do 16-8 fasting. That works out great. And then you end up like fasting for the first time for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 hours before bed. What'll often happen when you're not used to fasting is really easily you'll activate the counter-regulatory hormones. As insulin drops and blood sugar drops, cortisol is going to come up and release more blood sugar to keep your blood sugar stable. And that cortisol, that blood sugar, is going to feel like energy, and that's going to make it hard to fall asleep. So if you're not that experienced doing significant fasting, just a couple hours is what I'm talking about to allow your blood sugar to clear. But yes, if you are somebody who fasts more routinely, then you shouldn't have any trouble with too much energy late in the day, unless you're a little carb dependent and your body's reaching for that free blood sugar when it drops its energy. Ben's hungry now. He's gonna go get a snack. Hey, Radar. Thanks for doing these streams. Yes, you're my pleasure. I'm super happy to be of service for you guys and to teach you what I can, not just about neurofeedback, but about biohacking in general. All right. So what other biohacks do we have? Supplements, nootropics, and then some more myths. So for supplements, there's a handful that can make a difference. Magnesium can be really impactful if you're magnesium deficient, and many people are really magnesium deficient. So adding magnesium makes a huge difference. And there's some forms that can really have a large impact. Magnesium glycinate, because it's bound to glycine, is a buffering agent. Glycine itself is an amino acid that supports sleep quite well. So you might get some support there. Supplements that I sort of can recommend as a sleep stack before bed. I have a little 3-stack that I think synergizes beautifully well. Melatonin is one of them, but most people take way too much melatonin. The effective dose of melatonin is 1/3 of a milligram, 300 mcgs, micrograms. That's the effective dose. If you take 300 micrograms, you end up with that absorbed in your system. If you take more, you don't end up with higher amounts of blood level, but you get these very long lingering effects that take a long time. And the reason we take so much melatonin, I think it's a function of marketing. More is better, so we take more. Melatonin also has this bimodal dose curve. So a little bit of melatonin works very, very well for circadian support and sleep timing. A little more works less well. You get up around 1 milligram to 5 milligrams, maybe even 10, and people don't feel melatonin. But then you get above 10, 15, 20, and you feel it again. Now it's a sleep aid. It makes you sleepy. I would encourage you to think about melatonin not as a soporific, not to become sleepy, but to help with just timing the circadian rhythm. So this is stuff I want you to consider taking if you're going to take it. An hour before bed, not right before bed, but an hour before bed, 300 mcgs of melatonin, a little bit of L-theanine, 150 milligrams perhaps, and a little bit of GABA, maybe 300 to 500 milligrams of that. And L-theanine is GABAergic and GABA is GABAergic, but GABA itself doesn't get through the blood-brain barrier really well at all. So by taking the combination of L-theanine and GABA, there's a 6x sleep supporting impact of those compounds compared to either by themselves because of the sort of GABAergic signaling created by the L-theanine, and that creates metabolic demand for GABA, and you have that raw material afterwards. So that's my little sleep stack. Those 3 things do not make you sleepy, but if you take them, you will, after a few days, end up noticing the sleep urge starting to build up a little more reliably at the appropriate time. So you have your morning routine, you have some evening routine, other nootropics or supplements you could take in the evening. Cortisol lowering supplements, especially for people that are in their mid-years or older, can be really powerful. Those include things like, for magnesium, ZMA brings down cortisol nicely, and for men, it brings up testosterone nicely. It's a rare side effect, but ZMA can cause really freaky dreams for some people, really like intense, angry dreams. So if it happens to you and you're taking ZMA, drop it, because it's probably the zinc really driving that phenomena. Other things you can take to drop cortisol, ashwagandha will do it. Phosphatidylserine, PS, often labeled PS 150, PS 100 after the milligrams in it. It's a really strong cortisol dropper, the phosphatidylserine. So those are some basic supplements. There are a couple of peptide nootropics that are hitting the market now that used to just be research chemicals, but that have become available in the US. One is called DSIP, Deep Sleep Inducing Peptide, and it does what it says in the tin. No sleep med, by the way. No prescription or over-the-counter sleep medication that has existed causes sleep. They all cause a hypnotic state or mild sedation, and then sleep might take over. But let's take a little side quest on that for 1 second. So yes, there's pretty significant medications that are prescription, but we also, many of us take things like Benadryl, diphenhydramine for sleep, ZzzQuil and things like that. Diphenhydramine has some significant risks. And if you're a biohacker who has that as part of their pharmacopoeia, I encourage you to look at the research, because there appears to be a dose per dose risk with taking sedating antihistamines, essentially anticholinergics. Every dose seems to increase the risk that you have or will have dementia later in life. So there's something about the histamine system and the choline system, the cholinergic system, and they're interrelated. And if you suppress the histamine system too much, it looks like you can break the cholinergic system and cause dementia-type phenomena, acetylcholine, dementia in the temporal lobe. So I encourage you not to use Benadryl-type phenomena or type compounds for sleep. They're fine for controlling histamine, but if your histamine is not elevated, you might be doing your brain a disservice by using sedating anticholinergics. So DSIP is a peptide. It's the first thing that actually causes deep sleep. It's a peptide. You have to reconstitute it. You put it under your skin. It's a mildly invasive process. But when someone's really, really dysregulated and it's been weeks since they've slept well, or they have a chronic dysomnia that is really severe, it becomes a useful tool to consider adding in for doctors to use. So that's a nootropic stack strategy. And then let's just double down on the myths. Oh, Ben, you said melatonin's a prescription drug? Ben, what country are you in? If melatonin's a prescription, I'm curious. I had heard it was prescription in a few countries, but I forgot where it is. Is that in the UK or Australia? I know that nootropics sometimes and other psychoactive compounds can be a little bit different country to the next. And I know the UK and Australia both have a little bit of a restrictive access for some people. UK, yeah. So you have to go across the pond to France or Europe or somewhere to get it, maybe black market. You were given melatonin at age 10 and it stopped working. Yeah, my hunch is you were given too much. That happens. And then there's this dead spot between the effective low dose and an over-effective high dose. So what effect trazodone has on the EEG, I forget. It's established. You can look it up on PubMed. What does it do? It creates a little bit of slowing, I believe, but it also has a paradoxical effect. It might create some beta spindles. I forget. Whenever I get the medication list from somebody, I do another quick literature search and pull up my resources and see, what each EEG effect is. But I think it's a bit of a paradoxical effect with trazodone, where you get both sedation and activation effects in the EEG. So, all right. So last, some myths that I want you guys not to fall into the trap of. I've already mentioned that REM is not valid on sleep trackers. That's narcolepsy. Stay away. It's not real. It's just another line of marketing in a device. Maybe we'll be able to measure REM at one point, but right now we cannot unless you're measuring EEG in real time. But deep sleep, we can measure. The other big thing I've already kind of alluded to is light. The only light that really matters is in the morning. Evening light matters a little bit for intensity, but not for color. Blue blockers are useless. The color of light at the end of the day is not what affects the circadian rhythm. There's good studies showing that intensity, not color, impact stretching or precessing your circadian rhythm late in the day. So all you have to do to avoid disrupting yourself after dusk or sunset is not have bright overhead lights on. There's some positional cueing that can happen. So, desk lamps, not overhead lamps is great. Maybe put your TV on, dim setting instead of full bright setting. That's enough. That's enough to avoid all of the circadian concerns people, wear their blue blockers for. So I'm sorry, biohackers, if you're watching this and, cursing my name, please put it in the comments. And if you can find research to the contrary, let me know, because all the research I've seen suggests the blue blockers are all sizzle, no steak. And I actually wonder if they're harmful. I can't tolerate them, and I've heard this from several clients that I put on blue blockers, and within minutes I'm developing headaches or migraines. So something about that artificially constrained frequency coming in, I don't think it's a healthy thing to do. It creates a motion sickness style migraine trigger for me. So I don't know that we should believe in the blue blockers. I think we're wasting our money on those sorts of devices. Sorry, biohackers. So morning light matters, evening light, not so much. When you sleep doesn't matter as much as when you eat. And doing basic things like controlling your morning routine, controlling the coolness and temperature of your room have a huge impact for some people, especially if you've been doing some of these things wrong. If you're somebody who stays up late and snacks until bed and you suddenly change that, your next week will be different. A few days after you make a change, you'll be like, oh, okay. So the last thing I want to say on sleep is that we tend to have a rhythm. Now, we don't have this, night owls, larks, preferential time of being up. I do not believe that research is very well done. I think it's mostly theories. I don't think that some people are better at night, better in the morning. I think some types of brains better and train with the circadian rhythm and some don't. You get lots of ADHD. You might be great and productive at 10 p.m. because you're not well circadian and trained, not because you're naturally better at 10 p.m. And I would argue that humans can adapt to really profound changes in circadian, but we are not good unless the signaling is somewhat consistent. So think about signaling your brain the time of day through when you eat, through when your body is sleeping, when you're active, all of these circadian cues. Maybe add some supplements to help with the cueing, put a little bit of weight on the seesaw and use these features. Also, I have on the website article that goes along with this video, I've listed out some things that are more serious. If you snore a lot at night, if you wake up gasping for breath, if your partner, hears you snorting and choking a little bit, those are really serious phenomena called apnea, where our breathing is not well maintained. And that is not something to screw around with. If you think you have some apnea, go get a sleep test. Involves often sleeping for a couple of nights with wires on your head when done properly, or with a little audio mic when it's not done properly. But it's a good place to start. So if you think you might have some apnea, mouth taping might do it. You can do some other things that might help your ability to notice the tone of the throat while you're asleep and keep it open, certain types of exercise. But mostly rule out the deep, serious things like apnea, then start working on the environment, then work on the self in terms of biohacking. And really don't tolerate your sleep being suboptimal. So if you're always tired, it's probably because of either you're not getting enough sleep or your circadian rhythm is screwed up. And so, again, I don't believe in larks and owls. I don't think it's a thing. I do believe that if we're well entrained, our sleep is a lot higher quality and we need much less of it. My own example, if I allow my bedtime to get sloppier and I'm going to bed at midnight and I'm getting up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., I'm not rested. I need a good 8 hours, 8.5 hours if I go to bed late and get up late. But if I get up really early, stupidly early, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., then I only need like 6 hours of sleep max. And I feel incredible. And 1 hour and 3/4 of that 6 is deep sleep. But if I go to bed later and I get 8.5 hours, I'm still only getting the same amount, maybe less deep sleep. But I have to get a whole nother sleep cycle in, another 90 minutes in bed or something. So I think if you dial in your sleep, it has impacts for how you feel during the day, but it also has impacts for how well you can sleep. And that may mean you get more out of those sleep hours. All right, let me answer additional questions for our stream tonight, and then we'll finish off. So if you've been sent on a question, drop it in the chat. All right, let's see. Got to scroll up. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Is that a David's asking, is that a cortisol bump? That makes you second wind when you haven't eaten. Yes, exactly. Could also be, David, that you've like tricked yourself into like screwing with your circadian rhythm or something, because you can stare under bright lights and things and get a sort of wakeful effect. Let's see. Let me scroll down. Radar Ashwood, in my experience, intense focus interrupts sleep onset more than blue light because focus stimulates the frontal lobe. Yeah, I am definitely guilty of like getting to the zone at 8 p.m. and working till midnight a bunch of times. I understand. I feel that the reason I can do that is not so much because I'm better rested or more on right then, but because I'm not being bothered by people right then. There's a quieter background in terms of what's happening in my company's Slack channels and the emails coming in, everyone asking for help. And I'm less likely to need to go like, oh, gotta look at Reddit or whatever it is. I'm more like in a quieter mode. And I actually find I can move into the same and get work done and feel super productive and undistracted and unbothered by people from 4 in the morning until 8 in the morning. And when I do those 4 hours instead of 8 p.m. to midnight, it's a better 4 hours, better productivity. I'm left in a better place. And I still have a full day where I've already got tons of work done. So I'm a huge fan of like doing the homework or doing the hard work really early, first thing in the morning. I think it's a beautiful time to take quiet time and to do important stuff. So, okay, let's see. Couple more questions. Thanks, Fred, for joining us. Appreciate it. Ben says, not fast. Yep. Ben, how does one avoid focus? A wind down period, some reading, some journaling, low intensity, things that are not super changeable, that aren't, TV screens. That's a good way to wind down and to drop focus. Seizures and rage. Yeah, seizures might actually impact your sleep quite a lot, actually. Ben, I would encourage you to do some SMR training, try to tamp down on those seizures and probably fix your sleep at the same time. If you don't get the same effect anymore from SMR training, it's probably that your SMR has changed frequency. So you might need to alter how you're training SMR. You might need to mix your SMR with beta training to get the same SMR sort of central tone effect. So let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is over the counter in the US, more and more all the time. Let's see. Yeah, there's definitely with mood, there's a sleep circadian dysregulation. Dysregulated REM is a thing in severe depression and dysregulated sleep. Early morning awakening, when that starts to happen all by itself and you can't fall back asleep, that's one of the classic depression signs. Failure to have sleep maintenance, waking up all night long with anxiety, generalized anxiety is a very classic thing as well. So you can see phenomena of sleep dysregulation in people's sleep architecture that also reflects anxiety and executive function things when they're awake pretty clearly. So yeah, Elliot, I'm not going to mention caffeine too much. We can have a whole talk on caffeine. Maybe I'll do a live stream just on that. Let's see. Just scrolling down, see if I missed anything. Guess not. All right. So folks, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate everyone's questions and your participation. Super awesome. Please, if you can, like and subscribe, give a thumbs up in a video or two, leave a comment here and there on the channel. The YouTube algorithm gods love it when we sacrifice some attention to videos. So if you could come back to find some old ones and leave a question or two or say hello, that would catch some YouTube action, I bet. So I think next week I might do mindfulness and meditation, unless somebody has a better topic to suggest between now and then. But I like the basics in these live streams, and then I'm doing some more produced videos that will have more consumable content in shorter form. But I like to get into the basics here in these live streams. Oh, a couple more questions. Jay, hey Jay, any validity on the apple cider vinegar before bed helping sleep? I think it does. I don't know why. I'm not sure what that is. But there does seem to be, for some people, a tiny bit of carb will improve sleep, which flies in the face of what I'm saying. But I think it's enough to create a signal without enough to create lots of blood sugar. And I think maybe apple cider vinegar does the same thing. It might create some digestive process shift. I'm not sure. There does seem to be a lot of anecdotal report on ACV having impacts on sleep quality. So it may. Let me know if you try it and what you think. Radar Ashwood, just asking if I'm going to do a stream of meditation. Yes, I think next Monday we'll do mindfulness. what it is, what it isn't, how to do it, how to enhance it with some neurofeedback. I have great experience helping people really level up some ridiculous meditation experiences by layering neurofeedback with meditation practice and getting accelerated change is the shortest way to describe it. And a stream in alpha theta. Yeah, David, I might do a video on alpha theta, not a stream, because alpha theta is done eyes closed. And I like to do the protocol I'm talking about in the live streams. And so if I'm sitting back here, not talking with my eyes closed for 20 minutes, it might not be the most exciting live stream unless you want to talk amongst yourselves. But I will do a video, like a 10-minute or 20-minute produced video on alpha theta. I'll put that in the list for you. So give you a little bit of a primer on, the hypnagogic state access, the immune, the creativity, and the trauma utility of that protocol. All right, guys. Last question from Radar, and then I'll kill the stream. Can meditation bring permanent benefits like neurofeedback? I think it can, but you're going to have to do a lot more of it. Meditation's a lifelong thing. It's like you can get benefits from brushing your teeth, but you shouldn't stop. I think meditation's of that phenomena. You don't have to do much. 10 minutes a day might be sufficient lifelong for meditation, but I think it is important to do ongoing, even if the effects that build up are permanent. And we have evidence of that. You can see that lifelong meditators have thicker cortices. You don't lose the cortex through age the same way if you meditate, even for a little bit every day. So do some meditation. The right kind is the one you do, kind of like exercise. So, all right, everyone, you have a great evening. If you're watching live, if you're watching later, thanks for watching. Come at me with some questions and comments, and I look forward to supporting everyone in the future. You guys take care. Take care.